Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Andrea Diaz, and welcome to Coaching and Culture. Organizational culture and leadership play important roles in just about everything. Let's discuss some formal definitions of culture. Organizational culture is defined as the set of shared, taken for granted implicit assumptions that a group holds and determines how it perceives, thinks about, and reacts to its various environments. Shine. According to Collins and Porras, what distinguished the great companies from the good companies that they studied were the cultures, their core ideology, and sense of purpose for existing. Schultz. Organizational culture not only affects what people think, but the manner of how they think and act. Culture wields a strong influence over us all. At the national level, it defines, among other things, how we are brought up and how our education, legal, and social systems operate. At the organizational level, it defines how companies function and our careers progress, how we interact with our colleagues, and the political landscape. Holmes. Now, you know I had to drop some stats. In this lesson, we are going to discuss organizational culture, socialization, best practices, and how everything has changed, good, bad, or indifferent. So let's begin with organizational culture. An organization's culture is a living thing. It really is. Have you ever walked into an office for a job interview, and while you're at the interview, your spidey sense begins to tell you that something's a little bit off about about that place, or you hear the words echoing in your head, danger, danger, Will Robinson, or better yet, run. Well, what you are feeling is the organization's culture, also known as its vibe. Yes, for some, it is actually something that you can feel. Why? Because it's a living thing. An organization's culture consists of core values and shared beliefs. That is, what do we believe as an organization and why do we believe in it? And those core values and shared beliefs give us an identity, more specifically, a corporate identity. A corporate identity helps us to identify where we stand within an organization. And a corporate identity assists with assimilation into the organization's culture and ideology. No one is saying that you will agree or subscribe to those beliefs, but it does help with at least understanding the landscape in which you are operating. Up next, cultural liabilities. Okay, now it is important to understand that as wonderful and as important as culture is for an organization, and by the way, culture is absolutely necessary and needed. Culture in and of itself can be a liability. Again, culture in and of itself can be a liability. Why? Well, for starters, if you don't have the right makeup of the organization, that is, if you are limited in terms of your experience, in terms of the experiences of your talent pool, you are limiting your ability to be agile and nimble in the marketplace. Diversity and inclusion is not only trending, organizations understand that if they do not diversify and include more groups as it relates to talent and demographics, they are placing themselves at a significant disadvantage, personally, socially, and politically. I'm going to say it again. Diversity and inclusion is not only trending, organizations understand that if they do not diversify and include more groups as it relates to talent and demographics, they are placing themselves at a significant disadvantage, professionally, socially, and politically. Oh, yes, politically. There is something that doesn't escape any organization, no matter how large or progressive it may be, and that is office politics. Office politics is almost like death and taxes. It is always going to be there. Just making sure that you know that, okay? It is always going to be there, no matter how hard you try. Next, institutionalized biases. This is a big one. This goes along the lines of groupthink and siloed thinking. I am all for longevity within the workforce and an organization. However, nowadays, when you hear that someone has been with an organization for 15 years, don't you look at that person with a little bit of suspicion? The previous stance was, wow, that person is dedicated to the organization. Now the position is, why haven't you left? Or did you not want to experience something else? Having employees stay for a long time should be a cause of concern to all leaders. Okay, having employees never leave your organization should absolutely be a concern of yours. Why? Because your employees have not gained any new perspectives or experiences. People are creatures of habit, and we like it when it's warm and soft and comfortable. And when we become comfortable, we become complacent. And why is that? Because we're creatures of habit. When we become comfortable, we become complacent. And when we become complacent, we do not challenge the status quo. Hence, institutionalized biases. When you no longer challenge the status quo, result institutionalized biases. And when we become complacent, and when the organization develops or adopts that attitude of the way of it has always been done this way, then it becomes that much more difficult to change the organization's culture. This is not something that any leader should overlook. The longer you allow a culture that's not beneficial for you to perpetuate, the more difficult it will become for you to change that culture. Okay? Up next, socialization. Socialization. How do we get you on board? In other words, how do we get you to drink the Kool-Aid? That is truthfully accomplished through the process of socialization. And the first big and arguably the most critical step in the socialization process is what? Orientation. That's right, good old orientation. There are numerous items that should be covered in an orientation. Key elements should include, but are not limited to, in your orientation program, should be the history of the organization, description of the primary business, organizational makeup, company culture, performance evaluation system, basic policies and procedures, benefits, compensation, financial status of the organization, required documents, and the all-important tour of the facility. Even if the tour is now virtual, let's be honest, if you were on the other end, wouldn't you want to know what you're all about and what the company is all about? So make sure that you do the same things that you would like to see, you make sure that you show to your employees. Socialization also assists with integrating various generational demographics. We still have traditionalists in the workforce. That's right. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, some families could not afford their mortgages anymore. And then parents who had kids went to live with the parent and the child went to go live with the grandparent. And then the grandparent is still working because they're the only one that could have a job. So traditionalists are still in the workforce. So let's make sure that regardless of the demographic, you include everyone. Socialization also helps to decrease employee turnover and can help to increase the productivity as a whole of the organization and can engender and enhance commitment of the employees. So socialization really can help overcome some hurdles that would take longer to overcome had you not had this orientation and overall socialization process. Now, despite all of that, as a leader, especially in 2021 and beyond, your actions need to be seen as authentic. Okay, do you understand what I'm telling you? Everything that you do needs to be perceived, not only seen, but be perceived as being authentic by your people. If not, they will simply leave when another opportunity presents itself. Because what's going to happen is that this pandemic is going to go away. And then after the pandemic, I don't remember the study, but people had already said that those who were employed, that they were already looking or they were waiting for the next opportunity to come so they could leave their current employment. And then as a result, you're going to be right back to square one. So be very careful with what you do, because in the long run, it costs you more money with employee turnover. Okay. Up next, coaching. Coaching. Build the culture you want. That's right. Build the culture you want. Jack Welch, famous former CEO and president of General Electric, once said that we have to undo a 100-year-old concept and convince our managers that their role is not to control people and stay on top of things, but rather to guide, energize, and excite. Do you hear what I'm saying? This man already knew that managers are not to control people, but you need to energize, guide, and excite them. Imagine that, huh? Imagine that. Jack Welch was seen as a pioneer and was very ahead of his time, similar to Napoleon Hill. Those men were visionaries who not only led their organizations to greatness, but also influenced how many manage and lead their organizations today. As a leader, you can use formal and informal coaching in conjunction with stories to help create and foster the type of culture you want. You also want to use, you also can use unique language and jargon. Tech companies and governments and the governments and the governments are known for that. I remember working for organizations, and every time I went to work for a new organization, there was a new acronym to learn. There was a new terminology to learn. That every company has its own culture, its own jargon, its own way of doing things. Everyone has their own acronyms. So you have to learn that, because once you learn that, you then learn how to better communicate with your team, your staff, and the organization. So, for example, and also naturally, many organizations have rituals and material symbols. So, for an example, you can have a yearly conference or outing. Hopefully, we'll be going back to those once this pandemic subsides, and and retreats. So people develop their own unique cultures and rituals and everyday habits, and that also helps to engender and ingratiate people into the socialization and the culture of the organization. Anything unique and that adds value, okay? That's what you need to do as a leader. You need to make sure it's unique and it adds value. Lastly, make sure that you create a culture of coaching that supports clear and open communication, top down and bottom up. Because sometimes there's something that always gets lost. You have the communicator, you have the sender, you have the receiver, and then you have the message. And then in between the sender and the receiver sending this message, you have what? There's something called noise, right? Noise can distort the message. So you have to make sure that there's clear and open communication, top down and bottom up, because the better your communication is, the more effective you will be, the happier your employees will be, and the less stress and ambiguity and disillusion that you're going to experience, right? All of that's going to subside. So make sure that you communicate openly and clearly in all aspects, within reason. Of course, you can't tell your people everything, top down and bottom up. It is also important to note that creating a question-friendly workplace is a two-way street. So you want people to feel free to come and talk to you and ask you questions, because when people ask you questions, they're not challenging you. Sometimes they just have a question. Okay, so if you want to create an environment where people feel free and open to communicate, tell employees that questions are welcome, right? Tell them that it is okay, questions are welcome. I have an open door policy. Always respect the question. And and the reason why I say this is that you don't know what it took for that person to come and talk to you. You don't know what courage that person had to create and build within him or herself to come and talk to you. You might say, well, why are you bothering me with this? But you don't know what the perspective they're coming from. So always respect the question. Another thing, give the asker your full attention. How many times have you walked into an office and you want to ask your boss a question and he or she is still typing away and they're not even looking at you? Or he or she didn't even say, give me 1 second, have a seat, let me finish this sentence, right? When people are still doing things when you're asking a question, what message does it give you? Or what message does it give the person that's asking a question? You are not important. This is more important that I have to do, I don't really care what you have to say to me. And then what's going to happen? They're not going to trust you. They're not going to feel comfortable with you. And they're not going to feel that you have their best interest at heart. So always, always, always give the asker your full attention. In addition, be proactive, okay? Don't let things go through the grapevine because you should know by now it's always harder to do damage control than to get ahead of the story, right? So always be proactive with your communications and whatever you have to say to people. And lastly, ask questions as a friend, not an adversary. Because why you need the information, okay? Some people get very afraid about when you ask questions of them because you don't know what their experiences are, especially if you're a new leader and you're still trying to navigate and you're still trying to learn each other and establish the way of communication. So always, always ask as a friend and not as an adversary. Okay. Up next, everything has changed. In 2020, everything changed. Boy, truer words could not have been spoken. Honestly, no one saw this coming. It probably would have been more feasible for someone to reconcile in their brain aliens from outer space than having the whole world shut down, literally shut down for over a year due to an airborne virus. This is not to say that we lived under a rock, but we honestly couldn't even rationalize COVID-19 in the very beginning. With that said, it is important to know that we are resilient and are fortunate enough to be here to explore and truly live another day. So let's focus on the future of 2021 and beyond. 2021 is a year of the relationship. For over a year, many have spent their time isolated because of safety, not because of choice. As a result, people are starved for relationships and connectivity. Let's think about it. Gone are the days of people standing around the water cooler discussing the latest episode of whatever is trending and how the weekend was spent. That's right. You would be lucky to receive a fist bump nowadays. But as we know, this state will not last forever. However, in the interim, everyone is navigating this landscape to the best of their ability. So focus on building relationships and not just networking. Why? Because people are craving authenticity. I'm going to say it again. Focus on building relationships and not just networking because people crave authenticity. Yes, people want to see the real you. And do you know what the great part is? I see women beginning to be revered for being wives, moms, and caregivers along with working. Do you understand how significant that is? Women are now, after all this time, being revered for being a mom, a wife, a caregiver. Before, women used to hide it because they thought it would hurt their standing. Now women are like, I am a wife, a mom, a caregiver, whatever it is, and I'm proud of it, and they stand in their truth. It literally took a pandemic for the world to start recognizing your awesomeness, but at least the process has begun, right? All right. Next, women leadership is on the rise. Yes, women leadership is on the rise. I am so proud to say that it has never been a better time to be a woman leader and excel in the field. I mean, the platform is not only ready, but it is actively looking for dynamic and substantive women to not only change the game, but to help usher them into the future. Yes, women, they want women to change the future and they're looking for your help. So you need to step up and be a leader because you have a calling and you need to go out there and you need to crush and dominate and make your mark for yourself and for future generations. Okay, got goosebumps. Mental health, and let's talk about mental health and resiliency. This is more than a hot topic. This is about quality of life. No one expects you to become a mental health expert or professional, but it is your responsibility to offer help and resources to your people. Some examples include an assistance program, National Institute of Mental Health, National Alliance on Mental Illnesses, and more. All you have to do is ask for help. All you have to do is look, and someone will help you develop a program. I could even refer you to someone who specifically does things like this. But you don't have to be the mental health professional or expert, but it is your responsibility as a leader to provide the appropriate resources for your people. As a leader, you have tremendous influence and reach of your employees, peers, and constituents. Okay, so make sure that whatever you do, you use your words wisely. Words have weight, so use yours wisely. Okay, wonderful. This concludes lesson 11. Up next, in lesson 12, change the world. See you then.